I don't mind doing so.
I'd like to call to order the work session for the Mayor and City Council for the month of April and ask Mayor Pro Tem Foster to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming this evening. All council is present and accounted for.
You're welcome.
First order of business is the review of the minutes for March the 7th and March the 12th, 2018 regular meetings, and our March the 28th budget workshop. Anybody want to make any additions or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, they'll be up for approval on Monday night. Next is the time we have public comment regarding items that are not on our agenda. If anyone would like to make any comments, they can come to the podium, identify themselves by name and address, and have 3 minutes to make any comments that you want on anything you want. That's not on the agenda. If the item's on the agenda, we'll discuss that at a later point in the agenda. Anyone like to say anything?
Yeah, you go first, ladies first.
It's a team.
This is where you throw on the bets.
Good evening, Robin Fraser, Bentley Street, Taneytown. I just wanted to express my disappointment that there's not going to be an opportunity for citizens to ask questions about the budget. I have had some questions, and the budget director and city manager said that they're too busy to answer my questions. But I would just like to ask the council folks up there, if you would, to please ask my questions so that I could learn the answers to them. I wanted to know how much money is in the general fund, whether that has increased or decreased from last year, and why, and know the restricted funds and the non-restricted funds. And I would like to know on the utility funds also, the savings account basically, how much that has increased or decreased from last year, what the totals are, and what's restricted and what's not restricted. And then there was a lot of talk last year about how many units would come online and how much money that would mean as far as water hookups. And I would like to know how many units came online, and not just residential, but also commercial. Like we know Evapco expanded, you know, the pot grower is here, so there may be some water users that paid those funds. So I'm trying to understand those funds, and I haven't been able to get an answer. I can't ask a question, but you can, so I'm asking you to please ask my questions so that I can get an answer. Thank you.
Else?
Yep. Sorry, this is my first time. I don't know all the procedures. First off, thank you all for what you do. I know it's a low-paying and thankless job, so thank you for giving up your time for being here. I'd like to address...
Not to interrupt. Could you state your name and address for us?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Again, it's my first time. My name is Nicholas Beatty. I live at 308 Colbert Street in the Meadowbrook community. I'd like to address this the basketball hoop situation, I don't know if it's come to y'all's attention, but I got a sticker that I could not remove put on my basketball hoop that was at a dead-end street where I'm the only home on that portion of the street, stating that if I do not remove my basketball hoop, it will be seized by the police. First off, it's pretty disappointing that one, my wife was home, they could have knocked on the door. Two, I feel it's an absolute vandalism of my property. I understand it's just a basketball hoop. It's just a sticker on a basketball hoop. But what else can we just slap a gaudy sticker on for our residents? So I don't want to sound petty, but we adults we talk about our kids. Oh, I can't get my kids off the iPad or out from under, in front of the television. Well, my kids had a great place to play up until yesterday. Now, I talked to the police, who are awesome, by the way, and Mr. Weeprick, who spent a lot of time with me, and thank you, sir. It was told to me that in the name of safety, because God forbid a child be hit by a car, yet I couldn't find any evidence of that happening here in Taneytown, where a child was struck by a car while playing basketball in front of their home. I haven't lived here forever. I just moved here in the summer of 2014. So I'd like to, if this code could be repealed, if I could be given a waiver by the council for living on a dead-end street, or just something to be done, because I find it just quite ridiculous, that now my 12-year-old who loves basketball will have to walk to the middle school, cross Baltimore Street, cross many neighborhood roads to go play ball with his buds. Just seems a little crazy to me. And no, I do not want the city to spend money on more basketball hoops or anything. Keep your money. Let me keep my basketball hoop. All right? For liberty and justice for all, we all just got done saying it. Let's just keep our liberties. Leave each other alone. Let us live in peace. Thank you so much.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
You have one. I had a basketball hoop that had like wheels on it with a plastic thing at the bottom. You fill it with sand or water, and you can roll it in and out of the way.
Yes, mine's the same kind.
Is that the same kind?
Yeah.
And it was in the middle of the street at the end of the dead end. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to know about that. My lot is so hilly where it comes up that you can't play basketball in it. If I put a basketball hoop up there, it runs out in the street. But
Yes.
one of the nice things about playing basketball in the street is that it's level enough that the ball doesn't run into the street. The greatest fear I have about people being injured is the balls running out of the street and kids running after them. That's
chasing
when
after.
most of the kids get hit. So I'm sensitive to what you're saying because of the shape of my lot. I had my basketball hoop up next to the garage just because I didn't want to put it in our street. We're not a dead-end street. And we ended up down in the cul-de-sac a couple times and everybody running out of the street to catch it. So I'm sensitive to what you're saying.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Very well, we'll move into the agenda. I ask the council if there's any conflicts regarding any items that may be appearing on the agenda this evening.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, nobody has any conflicts. Resolution ordinances and agreements we have for adoption on Monday night. The water allocation resolution for April. Anybody have any questions on that?
No, sir.
All right. We have for adoption on Monday night. The manager's report. Henry, what do you have for us?
Well, if you've looked at the manager's report, you will notice that it says March. And I have obviously grabbed the wrong one and sent it. But not much has changed, with the exception, these still stand. I haven't heard back from Tony Stayers, and we're spending a lot of time Barry and I putting the budget together, so.
Questions for Henry?
I just want to thank Henry, Barry, and the staff for working on the budget. I know it's not I know it's not an easy thing to do, and I know it's very time consuming. So I want to thank you guys for the effort that you put into that.
Is there any questions on any of the departmental reports? Okay. Move into the legal report.
Mr. Mayor, 2 items tonight. The first item is just to kind of update you on the latest in Annapolis regarding their effort related to the cannabis distribution or dispensaries. If you remember that, when we talked about our zoning ordinance, we talked about how you had the growing aspect and the distribution or dispensary aspect. And we were very proactive. You remember Councilman Vigliotti was very forceful about wanting to get something in place to stop that. And we did, as you recall, we put a special exception into the zoning code, said it could only be in industrial zones and had certain setbacks from parks and churches and things like that and schools. That made it very, very restrictive as to where they could be located. And so we were happy because nobody's approached the city at all about doing that here. There are other places in the county they have, but ours is restrictive enough that, you know, basically people are not interested. So, of course, in Annapolis, you never know what happens, and there was a bill that was put in. It's House Bill 2, and House Bill 2 was put in, and an amendment to that House bill was to put a language in there that would preempt local zoning for the siting of medical marijuana dispensaries, which of course would undo everything that we have done. So MML reached out to the mayor and reached out to everyone saying, what did you guys do? Because we were one of the models, as you recall. We took what Westminster did and improved upon it. And we sent it down to them. The city manager sent it down. I had a conversation with MML. And the good news is that that amendment was amended in some fashion that is not going to be the case. So it did not pass to preempt local zoning. So it left everything intact, and we can safeguard the issue of the dispensaries. So the bad news is you see that how Annapolis works is at the 11th hour, it's the broad brush of just take away local authority, take away local zoning, take away local control, and we didn't have a problem. So the problem seemed to stem from Anne Arundel County, and I don't know, I didn't ask for the facts because it didn't really matter, but that's why this whole thing started with something with Anne Arundel County. So I wanted you to be aware of that to make sure you have the facts straight that that didn't happen. It's not going to affect anything that went on in here. So that's issue 1. Issue 2 regards the Meadowbrook development and their public works agreement. You have it under new business, but I figure while I'm talking, I'll explain it to you. You do not have a copy of the public works agreement in your package because there was no need to print out the same public works agreement that we've used every other time. You've approved the format. What I will get you before Monday night's meeting is all the numbers that are filled in there. But basically, you recall how we changed our formats for the public works agreement and changed when bond is posted. So the Meadowbrook development is getting ready to do section 5. They've taken your commitment that you really want development to occur that's planned so that you can do a lot of the budget balancing and things like that. They've taken that seriously. And so they're taking the risk of putting the next section on the ground, and they want to try to get that improved so that there will be homes to sell by the end of summer, so that we would actually have continuous building instead of the start and stop that they have there. This section, section 5, it consists of, I'm trying to put my hands exactly on it right now, consists of 28 lots in a first phase and 15 lots in a second phase. Now, we normally talk about phases where they go get approval for phase 1 and then they come back and get approval for phase 2. They're being more aggressive. They're going to record the entire amount, which is good for us because the taxes go up on everything. But they're only going to build the first phase, the 28 first, and then when they get finished that, they'll improve the second phase of 15. So the second 15 might not happen until a year from now, but that's the phase called number 5. The only difference in this public works agreement is going to be, we're going to do one public works agreement for all of it. They're just going to have to post bond for the phase that they're doing. So when they do phase one, they'll post the bond for phase one, and when they do phase two, they'll post the bond for phase two. They are still going to post the letter of credit for grading. Remember, we liked that. We said that was a great improvement so that we'll have grading easily accessible for a letter of credit. And they are not interested in waiving the time period of posting a bond until they get things constructed. Remember, with Meads Crossing, it was if you connect to the city, if you sell a lot, if you do these things, that's when you post a bond. They just want to do it the old way we've always done it, is we're posting our bonds when we sign our agreement and go on with that. The reason for them is it's so small and the scale of construction, it's easier for the contractor to connect to the city first, just as you would imagine a plumbing project, connect to where it is and build from there, as opposed to building out here and connecting last. So that makes any sense. So I'll get you a draft once the numbers are in it. I'll get you the applicable pages that have their bond numbers so that you can see that. And what we're going to be looking for on Monday night is you to approve that, just like we've had in the past, so that when everything gets past the Planning Commission, which is, they gave approval last month subject to getting the letters received by Jim Weeprecht from the county and things like that. So when that happens in the next couple of weeks, we can go ahead and sign the Public Works Agreement and move ahead. So that's a positive thing for the city, that you're going to see the development continue that you planned, and you'll be able to recoup your taxes and recoup your benefit assessment fees. And that's all I have.
I have a question. Do you happen to know whether the sticker the gentleman from Colbert Street got was a city sticker or a city police office? Was it a police sticker or was it a zoning sticker?
I'm unaware of any of the facts of that.
Do you know, Jim, whether that was a zoning sticker or a police sticker?
They weren't notified this time.
Okay, all right. I just wasn't sure whether it was from the police or from our zoning department.
Generally, if it's a mobile basketball goal, usually the police address those. We've had some where people have affixed permanent ones in the easement between the
I can see that would be a problem.
and those usually come to me.
That's why I said that about the one that I had with the wheels on it.
The movable ones, usually the police get those.
I know this law to protect our children from street traffic has been in effect for many, many years. And occasionally it comes up. It hadn't come up in a while, though, but it's something we like.
But the gentleman said that he's the last house on a dead-end street, though.
Well, and that may be true, but actually not for long, because we just talked about Meadowbrook Phase 5, and that street's about to get added onto to go into Phase 5. So it won't be a dead end, maybe for another year, if even, and then it's going to be extended.
All right, what else for Jay?
I'd actually like to ask about small cell towers. I know last month we all got together to oppose Senate Bill 1188, which would have preempted, municipalities from setting their own codes and regulations about where small cell towers could go. And I know that for the time being, that bill has been derailed, but I still think that we ought to move forward with our own regulations to preempt that in the future. So I'm curious about, the process. Is it something we can move forward with?
Okay, so you all recall, as the councilman saying, he penned a letter that you all signed.
Yeah.
And when
I
that
didn't
got,
sign anything. I don't agree with the local governments having extraordinary authority over cell phone towers.
Okay.
well, be that as it may.
If we did that with electric poles 50 years ago, we wouldn't have electric.
So when that letter got to Annapolis, they saw your signatures and immediately decided they weren't going to move ahead with this whole thing for the state, right? Actually, it didn't happen exactly like that, but they got your letter, and as part
Only
of...
town talks, people listen.
It did seem like it happened like that, okay? However, either way, the sponsor of the bill, which is the chairman of the Finance Committee, decided to move the issue to summer study. And I think that's where, with the last fight that you had heard. Summer study means there'll be a panel to put together, legislatures, people from the industry, people from local government. I mean, who knows who will be on the summer study committee. And the goal, of course, of that committee is to come up with a solution to how to deal with this. And the plan, as I discussed at the last closed session, the plan of this is really for the municipal governments to get everything in place, to be able to say we don't really need any state intervention at all, we have what we need. Similar to what we just talked about the cannabis thing, is that we don't think a one-size-fits-all is the way to go. We really think we know what we're going on here. And that's the interesting part, is that it's hard as a local government to flip-flop on sides. You can't be for local control on one thing and then go for state control on the other. You got to kind of own up to it if you're going to do it all. So along those lines, we are still working on, I forget, it was chapter 78 or 80, whatever the chapter is that we're working on, and I told you it was quite lengthy. This is the latest draft, okay, of the regulations for small cells just in Taneytown. We have 2 pages of comments from the city engineer finally, so that we can go through that. And we should make best effort to get this approved before the summer. So, you know, here it is, April. My thought would be maybe we can get a draft out by May. Maybe you could introduce it in June and pass it in July in front of the summer study, so that we can say, here's what Taneytown did.
Do we know when the summer study is going to occur? Not yet.
And summer study doesn't necessarily mean summer, just so we're clear. For them, it means before next January.
The next session.
Right. And you tell how interested they are, because if they start in June, it's really a big issue. And if they start in December, it was, well, we better get this done before we start again. So that's the plan on that. The interesting thing with this is that we don't need to be out in front in the state anymore, because the Gaithersburg, which we have patterned ours after, you know, we've taken some of their stuff and used this, they are the model for the country now. They really have done enough effort and work to talk about it. The problem is they're a huge government. They have permits for everything. They're, you know, it's very intrusive government where you have permits and things like that. Our problem is to pare this down to make it workable here, because I don't think that's what we're after. We're just after making sure that companies don't come in, ruin people's property value by erecting something without at least a hearing and a plan, so that people know what's happening around them. So that's the follow-up on that. We still anticipate trying to have the staff work it out and then get something to you to say if you're interested in reading it and figuring it out before we introduce it. That would be the thing.
And I should say, Councilman, you want to go first?
I did want to ask a question. This
Sure.
is, you referred to it many times as small cell phone towers. Is that defined? What is this? Because a lot of the Facebook traffic has talked about somebody putting up a big tower somewhere. But my understanding is that the bills that are summer study are just for small cell towers. Because that's what it's called. Is there a definition that decides, like the ones on our water
But
towers?
small has nothing to do with size. So, you know,
Why do
it's
they
one of
call it
those
the
things.
small cell phone
Because
tower?
they're not cell towers that transmit cell service. They're repeater towers. So they're not.
It could be any size at all, it's just
So-
that it covers a small area.
The antennas are that big,
Yeah, that's my understanding. That
on poles that are
small.
150 feet high.
Right.
So you can have 151-foot towers for a small cell antenna. So they're trying to say, if you really wanted the actual definition, small is the diameter of the service area,
Right.
okay? Whereas a cell tower covers wide variety, miles of line of sight. These small areas are small diameter service areas. And as I said in our work session for the retreat, you're measuring these in feet, meaning that a typical small cell node will go about 150 feet. And if you do the MOS technology, it might go a city block. So can you imagine if these things, these small areas, how many you would need in just Taneytown if they could put them anywhere, just for one carrier, because they don't work multiple carriers.
Right.
Every carrier needs its own service. So this is a hugely important issue to deal with, not only from a zoning and aesthetic type point, but also in a fairness of who gets to use the public right-of-way, because they believe they should use the public right-of-way for little or no cost. And that's the crux of the issue.
Right. And to the point.
That's a good answer. I'm sorry, Joe.
No, that's quite okay. No, the point that I was going to make is that, after we signed the letter, I also penned a column in the Carroll County Times with our opposition to it as well. And I got nothing but positive feedback about our opposition to Senate Bill 1188 and our desire to want to try to regulate this. I heard from people from every single possible political perspective. I mean, this is an issue that cuts across political lines, it cuts across age groups. I had one woman, for example, who contacted me who's going to be moving to this town, and one of the reasons why is because we're not going to have these towers all over the place. And so, these people wanted me to pass along thanks and gratitude to everybody on this body who signed that letter and who opposed this. So,
just for information, should anybody want to see one of these, if you go down 140, you go to what I call the Safeway Shopping Center, right next to the Western Maryland College Motel.
Best Western?
I don't know, best, yeah, that sounds good.
Right.
You can see one right there. It's on the Best Western side.
Okay. What else for Jay? Let's move into new business. Anybody have any questions on the financial report?
No, sir.
Anyone have any questions on the accounts that we've paid this month?
No, sir.
Catholic Charities lease renewal.
Now, if you recall, we talked about it last time, that it was a 3-year lease, which since then we've gone back to a 1-year, because there seems as though there may be some changes to that. But this lease runs from July 1 to June 30.
Do you have any questions on that? You never,
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to repeat what I said at the budget workshop of, I think it's quite irresponsible of the city to have such a low lease on that building when the expenses are projected to be over $10,000 and we only take in $600 a year in lease. I mean, we're taking a bath of over $10,000. I think we need to reconsider leasing the building, whether the building's worthy of still standing, or bring it up to, market rent.
and the purpose of this, when we began with it, was not to make money. I'm not sure I agree with the $10,000 cost, but regardless, it was used to take a piece of surplus city property and provide a benefit for some of the less fortunate citizens in our town. And we've done this for many years, and realizing that, again, it's not a profit-making facility. I don't have any problem with trying to make it a break-even facility, but I don't know that we need to look at in this a profit-making facility. But that's my opinion. It's a project that we have supported many years, and many people in our town, many of our citizens have benefited from it.
When is the deadline for the renewal, do you know?
July 1.
July 1, okay, thank you.
And that's what I was going to point out. I thought that, the Catholic Charity Lease houses the Head Start and the Head Start program. And I thought the idea this time was to shorten the lease at this time so that we can look at, what we want before the next.
That was my
Lease.
understanding.
How long is has the lease been?
1 year.
1 year?
We've been leasing it 1 year by 1 year for about 20 years.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And I understand the intent of that. Breaking even would be great. I'm not trying to turn a profit on this thing, but when you see the expenditures budgeted for that building creeping up as high as they have, we really need to consider that perhaps it's just not economically proper to use the city's money on that.
Well, we have decided to investigate and examine this issue and make a decision based on what we find, but I think that for the immediate future, which is July 1st, we need to move forward with the lease, and that's as we have it now. I don't know that we'll have time to fix it by then.
Well, Mr. Mayor, if I may, two brief things. Number one, I certainly understand where Councilman Wance is coming from, but I would agree with you, Mr. Mayor, that I think this is almost like a public service in a way that we allow Catholic Charities to rent the building for Head Start. And when you read through the agreement, they do assume a tremendous amount of responsibility for repairs, for all these different maintenance things. And I think, this is a situation where we're able to do more good for the community than otherwise. And the second thing that I'd like to say is I have a question on page 2. I notice that there seems to be a new section that's highlighted in yellow talking about how we as a lessee may terminate the agreement if the, or I'm sorry, we as a lessor may terminate the agreement if the lessee loses a portion of funding for the program. So I'm just a little curious about that, why that is now in there and what the purpose of that is.
That's new, isn't it?
They asked us to include that when they said, and the idea is they're the lessee, so if they would lose funding, they don't want to be able to have to stay there the whole year. They only want to pay us through that. So it's a 60-day notice. And that was an easy give because if you look at paragraph 21, which is existing, it says the same thing without all the flowery language, that you can get out with 60 days notice no matter what. So it made them feel happy and comfortable. It was easy to do.
Okay.
Am I correct? Are they associated with Catholic Charities of Maryland?
Yes,
Okay,
it is they're located downtown in Baltimore, Cathedral Street.
right.
But I guess in lieu of what we've been talking about, my question, I guess, is are we going to proceed with the contract by just changing it to a one-year contract, or are we going to get in here and gutting the thing in the next couple of
What
months?
was your last comment? Or are we going to?
Are we going to get in and modify and change that contract?
Before the lease comes
Before
due.
the lease comes due in July?
Right.
No, my thought was that we would sign the lease in July that goes to June of the following year. During that period is when we'll look at this and address some of Councilman Wax's concerns.
That was my understanding as well. I just want to make
Okay.
sure that hasn't
So
changed.
this is an action item for Monday.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, next is Meadowbrook Section 5 Public Works Agreement.
Okay,
James
already.
explained all that already. And then the final item is the street paving recommendation. Do you have a bid that we received today from a party on our street paving program?
Now, just a couple of comments on it. I know the council in past has been very sensitive towards one bid. But I will say that, where did my notes go? Anyway, we had, I got that. We had 6 people pick up the bid package. We had 2 companies call about it, and we only received 1 bid. But I will, call your attention that in this, the recommendation also says that if we don't move forward with this, we will lose funding. And that would be the, the grant that we get from state highway in lieu of the user revenue funds.
Questions for Henry?
What's the date of when we lose that funding?
July 1.
It's on the-
And that'll be up for approval on Monday night?
Okay.
All right. Next, we'll have some time for public comment pertaining to agenda items. Anyone care to make any comments on any of the items that appeared on tonight's agenda?
Hi, Robin Fraser, Bentley Street, Taneytown. I just wanted to offer a couple of suggestions. On the basketball item, perhaps there could be some exception that could be in your law. I don't know how it reads right now, but it seems logical that if you're at a dead end and you as a parent think it's safe for your children to play, that perhaps there's some kind of exception that could be written in. And even if it's only for 1 year, it'll be 1 more year to be able to play basketball. So I would
Okay, thanks.
suggest maybe somebody try to see if that's a possibility. And on the Head Start, which I agree that's a nice benefit to the community, I don't remember, I think you discussed what the $10,000 worth of improvements were. But perhaps that's a project that a nonprofit could pick up, Caring and Sharing, or some other community group that does that kind of work, and maybe we can make a partnership out of that and try to relieve some of those costs so it doesn't seem so high.
This isn't a unusual thing for a municipality to do. Many municipalities have housing authorities and after-school programs and all kind of social services benefits that they offer their citizens. We have very few of those things. This is one of those things that we offer. So it's not like we're have gone overboard and given away the store, but it's.
Mr. Mayor, my understanding is that the $10,000 figure that's being used is not an annual expense figure.
That's
But
annual.
But is it?
Improvements?
Included some renovations, is that right? That we came up with that figure because we were doing some renovations because we're concerned.
No, we
about
did not,
pollution.
we're not doing any renovations.
So it's heat and water and stuff like that all added together comes to $10,000.
Yes.
Okay, I was not aware of that. Okay.
So it's utilities and things that come to, is
Yes.
it 10,000 or 3,000?
I don't remember, I don't have
Well, the
that
number
before me.
10,000 was used tonight. I'm not sure where that came from.
The amount on the draft budget is $10,800 of expenditures for that building.
Okay, well, I didn't remember the breakdown and thought that it maybe had some renovations in it, and maybe there's some partners that could help to make that easier to swallow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The renovations that was spoken about was during the course of the last contract, one of the things that happened was their population increased. And there are, I don't know whose regulations they are, but basically the regulations that say that you can only have so many students in a building, and if you exceed that number, then you must have additional bathrooms. They, at no cost to us, installed that. And when they go away, we get to keep that.
Didn't we improve the HVAC system?
That is true too.
But we received a grant for that.
Yes, that is true.
All right, anyone else have any questions?
Again, Nick Beatty, 3008 Colbert. Along with I would like to, I can't cite the proper code, but the code for basketball hoops on city or near city streets. I would like to see that looked at again, as well as how people are notified of code violations as well. And my last question, Mr. Vigliotti, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly.
Yes, sir.
The regulations on the cell phone towers.
Yes, sir.
Is there already a proposal of regulations to what those would be?
I think that's in the works right now. I mean, the Senate had their own version of how this was going to operate. You're free to look at my copy if you'd like. It was Senate Bill 1188.
1188.
And essentially, I mean, this thing was rife with abuses of power. For example, it was going to preempt our local zoning board from being able to have a say in where these things would go. So, for example, this would give them the right to put them up in an historic district, right? We basically lost every shred of power that we would have had to have any say in this whatsoever. And that was one of the primary issues that we were concerned about, is that, we would lose our power to have a say.
Also, in developments that have underground utilities, they could go up, so.
Okay. No, yeah, I get it. My only concern is, like, when technology changes, that definition of small might go from 150 feet to 10 acres, So I don't know if a time limit can be put into regulations. Like I said, I'm not Mr. Smart Guy like you all, but if we can look at it to where, we're not just outlawing it for forever and now we got to come back and repeal something or completely change something,
Yeah,
that it might be a good idea.
It's not a question of outlawing it, it's a question of requiring the carriers to come before us with a plan that we will approve or disapprove.
Okay,
So that's the issue.
all right.
One of
Thank
the,
you
one
so
of the
much.
things also in that is, and maybe it was glossed over a bit, but we're talking about one carrier. That mean, you know, Sprint, Verizon, they each have to have their own. It's not just
course.
one with the, so what would happen, and this is why we're kind of fighting with this too, is all of the most recent neighborhoods that we've been putting up have no utilities above ground. So the likelihood would be, you would think, you'd have might have one of these in front of your house.
Yeah, which I don't want. I'm just saying, I also don't want to see the technology change over time, and now it's like, man, I really wish we had that set
That's
up.
another issue. That's the technology today. What will the technology be like 10 years from now or 5 years from now? So it could be something entirely different, and we might be stuck with these hundreds of towers scattered all
Exactly.
through town that are now obsolete. So who's responsible for taking those down?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Marvin Flickinger, 80 East Baltimore Street. I still have an antenna for my television. And a few years ago, the government made us get a little box, if you recall. They changed the signal. I know nothing about electronics. So you'll find that out as I speak. And ever since we had to do that, our television is worse than it ever was. Before, I heard the truck drivers talking. That was just not too often. But now the television will go completely blank into a puzzle-like effect. Then it'll come back on clear. Now something's interfering with that. It actually comes on the screen, low signal. The question I have, if these cell phone towers are going to be put or would be allowed to be put, I don't know the strength of their signals. Would their signals be more interference for my television? Not only mine, but other people's too. The FCC, I think they have the right, if you can find out who's disturbing your signal, they'll come in, and there is devices that they would have to add on to whatever's causing it to eliminate that. So that's something to think about with it.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Anyone else care to make a comment? Well, thank you all for your participation. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried.